The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a hoop-ball.com presentation. I'm Dan Bespris, and I am very excited, and I know Vince and I talked about it a little bit last week, but we are now easing into the part of the offseason where we bring you guys some new voices, so you're not stuck with just the same two of us every day. I know that the sound of my voice can get extremely boring, and Vince talking about Pokemon has made everybody want to cry. So with that in mind, we're going to start to roll in some of the fresh faces of the podcast world, and I am joined today and this week, well, today and on Thursday, by hoop-ball.com's Mike Passador. Mike, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm not much going on. I'm doing well. How are you, man?
Well, I am roughly the same as as the last time that people heard me yell at them, but I want to spend a little bit of time on this show, and Vince and I, by the way, to those listening, will be kind of trading off in that I'll be with Mike this week. Vince will be bringing on another of the hoop ball experts next week, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth over the next, month or so before we start to get into, and I can't believe I'm saying this already, but NBA preseason is not that far off.
Thank God.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, this is a tough time of year. There's nothing going on right now. We've got the Olympics, and that's it. And Mike, I'm going to get your thoughts on that as well, because I know you've been covering the Olympic basketball for hoop ball. But before we get into that, I want to get to know you a little bit myself, and I want the listeners to get to know you as well. I'm basically in the same boat for those of you tuning in today as anybody that is listening, in that Mike and I had not spoken before about 5 minutes ago, other than direct messaging on Twitter. So, Mike, I couldn't help. The first thing I noticed is your Twitter handle is not the same as your name. It's close, but it's not the same. Your name is Mike Passador. Your Twitter handle is Mike_Pandador.
That is correct.
And I guess it's not so much a question, I guess, as it is a desperate need for an explanation. The first thing that I think of when I hear the word panda is Pablo Sandoval. But you're not a Bay Area. Yeah, you're not a Bay Area guy, though, are you?
No, nor am I a Red Sox fan. So that's too bad. I'll have to think about changing it. But that little nickname kind of came up in high school. I wouldn't say I'm a huge guy, but I'm definitely above average, and I'm pretty docile and laid back. So I guess if you were to assign me like a spirit animal, I think a panda would be a good fit. And I suppose that really built up some steam, and it's stuck since then. And I also am half Asian on my mother's side, and that really led to a lot of questions about my ethnicity back in high school. And, people thought I was like American Samoan. People thought I was like Native American, all kinds of different things. And I wanted to have some fun with it. So I just told everybody who guessed that their guess was correct. And, over time, really, they all kind of compared answers eventually and found out that I was not anything that they said. Eventually it came out, and the panda nickname kind of stuck. It fit, and I can just put it on Twitter. Thought it'd be good for some chuckles, and hopefully that does it for some people.
I had a mild chuckle. I'll give you. Are you an expert on pandas now? Have you spent a bunch of time in your life looking up what they do and trying to emulate them?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I think enthusiast is a good
panda enthusiast. So
I've dug long enough to know that they eat a lot and generally like to sit and rest. I'm afraid if I dig too much further, I'll find something that I don't like.
Is there I think I had read somewhere that they're big into eucalyptus. Is that a real thing, or is that made up?
Well, I don't know about that. I know they're big into bamboo, but I guess that's kind of the stereotypical thing. I mean, I know most animals are okay with eucalyptus, especially like koalas, obviously.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking of. We're going koala. So that's my mistake. All right, so the panda is with us here on the podcast today. And everybody at Hoopball kind of has different areas of expertise. Vince is more towards DFS, and he and I did a daily fantasy show through most of the basketball playoffs. Obviously, Aaron Bruski, the founder of Hoopball, he is more or less a national champion in rotisserie leagues and in full season NBA action. That's actually where I gravitate more towards myself. But where do you kind of see yourself fitting into this NBA fantasy puzzle? Where the landscape? Where does it drop you?
Well, I joined Hoopball to kind of take more straightforward coverage off your guys' hands, so you can focus on the fantasy, which is obviously your bread and butter. But for me, I've been a long-time fantasy player, pretty much ever since I can remember. I've been into it, and I think that it's not so much one specific game type or setting that I can excel at, but I really like to go through numbers and large sets of data and pull out trends. I think that I'm good at identifying patterns. So, picking out players who might have kind of flown under the radar last season or in whatever time interval you want to look at, and then kind of looking at underlying things that might say this person's primed to bust out, this person's going to have new opportunities, things like that.
So you're actually you cover more from the standard NBA angle, more topical stories. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct.
Oh, that's awesome. So what's caught your interest so far this offseason? There's a lot going on.
This offseason's been, lately it's been pretty boring, but obviously Kevin Durant was the big one, and I think that's just massive. That's changed things probably forever.
Did you see any of this coming?
I did not. I remember when I was covering it, I happened to be working the blog side of Hoopball the day that he made his announcement, and I wanted to be prepared, so I had written up 3 drafts for each scenario. So I have one in the draft folder of Kevin Durant choosing the Celtics, and I have a really nice long one about him staying with the Thunder. And I kind of glossed over the Warriors one because I just didn't think it would happen. And that ended up being the one that the world got to see. So I had to go back and fix it up a little bit. But there's a really nice piece about Kevin Durant picking the Celtics that no one will ever find.
That's really nice. That's, what is that? Dewey defeats Truman, and that'll go down in your archives forever. Let me ask you another question about the Kevin Durant thing. Since you're covering this more from a true news perspective, what do you think about the fact that a lot of players, athletes in general now, are utilizing this player-run Players Tribune to make their big announcements?
I kind of understand it in the sense that when you can release a full statement like that, it's much easier to get your full message out and give thanks to everyone that you need to give thanks to when something like this goes down. Even on Twitter, guys will write out something in the notes and then post the screenshot of that. But, a lot of times that isn't sufficient. So I understand it from that perspective. But, I think I'm a little bit surprised that people are gravitating towards the Players Tribune. I'm just not really sure the benefits of it as opposed to other media sources, I guess.
Yeah, my initial reaction to it, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but it was something that popped into my head while we were talking about kind of the topical side of the NBA, is that it feels to me like it's something that they're still trying to build. So by releasing these giant news stories via the Players Tribune, they're maybe trying to build a readership, but I don't know. I actually don't know anyone, and I'm not trying to knock the Players Tribune. I hope that's not the way this next statement comes off, but I don't know anybody that reads it. That is somebody that's sitting and waiting for the next Players Tribune story to come out. I know a lot of people that go there when a Kobe Bryant story comes out or a Tiger Woods story comes out or the Kevin Durant news comes out. But personally, I haven't been back to the website since the Kevin Durant news broke. So if that's what they're trying to do is develop a readership, I don't know if they're doing it the right way.
I agree with that. I think that's exactly right. I mean, to me, it seems like a place that people will go once there's an announcement that is there. But if there's news out, that's not going to be your first place to check. And I think you can kind of tell that they might not be entirely sure what they're trying to do, because when news like that broke, unless you were within 30 seconds to click that link, that website was not going to open up for you to read Kevin Durant's letter. So
yeah, that was a problem too.
I don't think they were ready. I mean, I was very lucky. I got in there right away, but
I think I actually saw the Twitter image that you were talking about. But sorry, go ahead.
the other thing that I didn't appreciate was that he kind of buried the big news like in the middle. So I opened it up, and I was expecting more like a traditional news story and have kind of the headline right as the title or right at the front, and I had to like skim through half of it. And I was just like, "Come on, tell me, because I got to get the story out. I want to be first." So
yeah, and I mean, well, obviously with a podcast, for us, the length of time that somebody listens to the show is very important. But for a newspaper or a news article like that, I mean, I guess every website does track the amount of time spent for unique visitors at their website, and if that runs it up by an extra 15 to 20 seconds, then I guess, good on them. But
yeah.
Anyway, so that's a digression here. I do want to continue to kind of probe the who is Mike Passador part of this podcast. So how did you get linked up with Hoopball?
So like I said earlier, I've been playing fantasy for a while. It was kind of a natural progression from my basketball fandom. Because I'm the personality type that likes to kind of create something. I like to get the pieces of a puzzle and kind of put them together. So the ability to do that, with fantasy sports in general, just to have this collection of players with different attributes and skill sets and try to build something complete and competitive really appealed to me. So I followed Brewski's work when he was at Roto World. He helped me win a couple leagues back in the day. And, I think 3 or 4 months ago now, I was just poking around on Twitter and I saw that Hoopball needed support. So I drafted up a quick sample, sent it along, and now I'm here. Now I'm part of the team, and it's exciting. I think we got a lot of good stuff coming down the pipe. So
yeah, the 2016-2017 season is going to be magical, and I don't think I'm going too far in using that word because every one of us is kind of building towards something big for this coming season. And Mike, I know that you're going to be a wildly busy sort, but I'd like for there to be a podcast through Hoopball that does focus a little bit more on the stories of the day, as opposed to every show being about one particular fantasy angle. So we'd certainly love to have you. Whether it's Fantasy NBA Today or a different show, your availability, it remains, of course, a big question mark. But if you're down for it, maybe that's something that we could talk about, yeah?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Outstanding.
I think podcasting is kind of the way to go in terms of getting news. It's a nice way to get everything in there. So
yeah, and you and
definitely.
we can pick a time that works for both of us. That's the best part about podcasting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a little bit about basketball then, and
Sure.
if some more stuff on your personal history comes up, we'll go over that as well. What you've been covering the Olympics for Hoopball, right?
Yes, I have.
What the heck's going on?
Well, the Americans are just rolling over everybody in a shocking twist.
Good.
And
I feel like I should cue up the Tim Allen grunt after that statement.
yeah, no, I'd like to give some credit to Venezuela for playing 10 minutes of really horrifically ugly yet competitive basketball last night. For those of you who don't know, Team USA, the men were tied at 18 with Venezuela after the first quarter last night, and then they proceeded to win by 40-something.
Yeah, it looks like 44 was the final.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
It was tied, and people were starting to you heard the murmurs of, oh my God, maybe they're not infallible. And then they ripped off like a 21-2 run, and then I went and had dinner because it was done. So,
is there anything that an NBA fan could take away from these Olympic Games? I get the feeling the short answer to that is kind of no.
Kind of no. I think if you have a certain player that you're watching, you can definitely take some stuff away. Like, I know a lot of people, especially because, we're fantasy driven, will be interested in a guy like Nikola Jokic, who's on Serbia right now. And he's honestly been pretty disappointing. He's a guy that strikes me as someone that they could really run their whole team through if they wanted to. But he's just not making it happen. He's kind of been relegated to this perimeter mid-range shooter. And he can do that. He can excel at that. But it's just not his bread and butter. And to me, he's an excellent passer out of the post, and if he's not down there, there's another skill set that's just kind of going to waste. So If you know what you're looking for, there's definitely some fun stuff to be had. And I think for me, it's also been fun to look at guys that I don't normally get to see. Like also in Serbia, there's this guy, Miroslav Raduljica, and he just looks great. I mean, he's not a terrific defender, but he looks like just a big man that can straight up score. And he and Andrew Bogut had a nice battle for most of the game yesterday, and he put up 19 points, I want to say. So, if you like basketball, there's always going to be something you can find. And especially as we get further into these group stages, you're going to find more competitive teams that match up. I know the first couple days were really just pathetic, tons of blowouts, but it's starting to kind of tighten up, and it's been getting better. I will say that. I don't think there's hope for like a close American game for a while, but we'll see.
So I have two follow-ups, and they're in wildly different veins. The first one is, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that if you're actually looking for a fantasy relevant angle from the Olympics, you should be looking at any team not named the United States.
That is 100% correct.
Okay, so I'm reading into that properly. The other question I have is, when does the group stage change? What's the timeline of this? I have no idea how this all shakes out.
So basically there's 6 teams in each group, and right now they're in the round robin stage, so there'll be five games in this for everybody, and then after that the top 4 from each group will advance to the bracket, and then it'll just be kind of a standard 8-team single elimination tournament. So we're on day 4 now. I guess we're about halfway done with the group stage. So by this time next week, we should be on to the serious do or die moments.
So anything going on today or tomorrow in the Olympic round robin stage that you've kind of got your eye on?
Well, I currently have on the TV Brazil and Spain, the men's game.
Yeah, I think that just got underway a few minutes ago. We'll timestamp the podcast. It's about 10:30 Pacific time right now.
Yep, it started, I think, 10 minutes ago. Brazil's currently winning, but I don't expect that to last. I think Spain will be a really interesting team because they had it against Croatia and just kind of wilted at the end. I think they're definitely more talented than a lot of the teams here. I think probably they're second to France in my mind, but again, France is one of those teams that's looked pretty bad in their first 2 games. I know they won last night, but they only beat China. No disrespect to the Chinese national team, but France just has enough raw talent that shouldn't be an issue. And really, they should have won by more. They committed a lot of just horrendous, sloppy turnovers last night. So really, if you're looking for a challenger to the Americans, Australia has stood out. Lithuania looks like a decent team, but they're not really going to give them a run for their money, So just going forward, it'll be a lot of kind of close games between nations that you might not get to see with players who aren't in the NBA. So, if you're watching and you care about the fantasy side, obviously you're going to want to look for someone that you might care about and hope that they excel, because for the most part they're playing weaker competition.
Or maybe you look for somebody you care about and hope that they flop and
that too,
and they drop around in fantasy drafts and you can try to pick them up. Mike, I want to talk to you again on Thursday, and I want to talk a little bit about the offseason so far. Do you have time to catch up again later this week?
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this one up. We're going to keep this show on the brief side. This, by the way, was your introduction to our new buddy, Mike Passador. Again, on Twitter, he is Mike_Pandador. Pandador is the last name. I'm Dan Bespers, and this is the official off-season editions of Fantasy NBA Today. Mike, I don't want to cut you off. Were there any other final thoughts before we take a little 2-day hiatus?
Everyone, enjoy your 2 days. Enjoy the Olympics. Hopefully we get some close games.
Yeah, so Mike's watching the Olympics for you, for everybody out there.
That is true.
You don't necessarily have to do it. You can follow his work at Hoopball. That is hoop-ball.com, at hoopballtweets. When you see that Pandador link, give him a follow. Check him out, and we'll pick his brain a little more NBA-heavy stuff coming up on our Thursday show. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and have a wonderful couple of days. This was Fantasy NBA Today.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.